Right. So welcome back to the Weight Escape. I am super excited. I have a fellow Canadian on today, which I know sounds kind of funny, but sometimes in this industry we get really, really busy with people from all over, and sometimes it's nice to have someone from your own country. So I'm
It totally
super
is.
excited.
Yeah.
We're close, but we're not that close either. It's kind of funny. But this is Laura. Laura has a lot of experience in the fitness and wellness industry, and I'm actually going to let her jump in and tell you a little bit about herself, where she's come from, and sort of why she does what she does.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. I'm so excited to be here. I've been in the industry for about 12 years. I started out as a personal trainer working for like a box gym type of thing, like a lot of us do 12 long years ago now. And in that time, I've become an exercise physiologist. I was dabbling with working in like cardiac rehab and with pediatric obesity. And at the time, none of that really panned out because there were no jobs available. So I ended up actually opening up my own gym, going into business with my husband. That was about a 5-year journey until we decided to close and just shift everything online. So since then, I've been working with lots of great people on their nutrition journeys. I've been helping other coaches building their businesses and developing the skills that they need to better help serve their clients. So it's been a ride. I've done pretty much everything you could in this industry. And what we're going to talk about today is actually one of my favorite topics. So I'm really excited to dig in.
I'm so excited about that. And I know you're super passionate about this topic. So I'm super excited to jump into it. So
Awesome.
without further ado, our topic today actually is self-sabotage.
Yes. Yes, it's such a misunderstood phenomenon, and I cannot wait to clear the air for all of our listeners because it's actually a much easier one to break free from than a lot of media likes to make it seem.
Mhm.
And really, at the root of it, if we're just going to jump right in,
Let's
it
just
has a lot to do with our subconscious minds. The problem is that a lot of what we read and a lot of what we study and see in different diet cultures that we follow and different influencers maybe we see online is that we need to just make different decisions, right? We need to do things to make a better choice. And the problem with that mentality is that we're completely forgetting that a lot of the time our choices are actually being triggered without us even knowing it, completely subconsciously, based on the environments that we're in, the people that we're around, the beliefs that we've had passed on to us from our parents and from people in our lives. And we're kind of just along for the ride. Yet we're made to feel like there's something wrong with us if we sabotage. There's something broken in us. We don't have enough willpower. We don't have enough motivation. What's wrong with me? Why can't I be consistent? Type of thing. And I just want to make sure everyone listening knows that that's actually not the case at all. There's nothing wrong with you if you're feeling this way, if you're feeling like sabotage is something that you struggle with. What's actually going on is there's something going on in your environment that you're completely unaware of. And likely this pathway in your brain was given to you as a child. Like a lot of our weight loss journeys start from childhood based on what our parents taught us about our own bodies, food, how we should relate to food, who we are as people, what we need to be accepted or loved or feel connected to the people around us, right? We live our life trying to morph into this person that will be accepted no matter what. But while we do that, we are in the background creating all of these little beliefs and meanings to different things that happen to us that actually drive our core behaviors. So let's just say, for example, you've been working on weight loss for a while and you've been trying fad diet after fad diet, or you've been working with a coach after coach, or you've just been trying to eat healthier and nothing you do seems to work because eventually you feel like you just lose willpower, you lose motivation, and you sabotage. What you've been doing is you've been focusing on your decisions. You've been layering things on top of your old behaviors, your old decisions, hoping that something will make it so that you don't do that old thing. Like we've been creating these bumper pads that we can sort of bounce off of when we start to feel shaky and we want to go back to our old patterns to hopefully control our behavior, right? And while those things, they play a role for sure, like we need to have some structure and we need to have some education. What I really want you to start to focus on is the idea that what is going on emotionally in you first. Because what happens before we make a decision is we always feel an emotion. So if you feel like in a moment you are having these thoughts around, I'm going to fall off track, I can't do this anymore, this is too hard, I want you just to practice pausing, recognizing that thought. Pause right there, because that is the key. The emotion you're feeling right before you make that decision is the key to unlocking all of this. The problem is that a lot of people are too afraid to feel that emotion. It's really scary because it can bring up a lot of past trauma. But if you're willing to feel it, if you're willing to sit with it, to name it, to bring it to the surface, and you don't have to do anything with it, you just have to practice sitting with it and experiencing it and accepting it as a part of who you are right now, you can let it pass through you, okay? From that emotion, once you've been able to do that, we want to take it one step further and look at the beliefs that we have around what possibly happened in that moment. What was it that triggered me? Did my husband bring home my favorite ice cream and I couldn't say no? Okay, well, what beliefs do you have about that? Maybe you believe if you say no, that means you don't love him. Maybe you believe that if you say no to ice cream, then you're going to be rejected. Like really dig into what is the true source of that emotion. Why did you feel anxious in that moment? Because you had conflicting viewpoints. On one hand, you wanted to follow your plan. On the other hand, you're battling with rejection. One of them is more painful. Guess what? The one that's more painful wins. So the one that was more painful in that moment was probably rejection, right? We want more than anything to belong. And if you're afraid that your husband's going to be mad at you if you say, honey, I don't want the ice cream, you're going to ditch your diet and you're going to sabotage because you're protecting yourself. You're protecting yourself against rejection. You're protecting yourself against feeling all of these things that you potentially began to feel and associate pain with from a child. You can take it so far as asking yourself, oh, wow, that's really interesting. So I was afraid that my husband would be mad at me if I said no. Do I have a memory of that from when I was a child? Do I remember saying no as a child and being rejected or being shamed or made to feel guilty? 9.999 times out of 10, the answer is absolutely yes. So we need to just be willing to go there. And this is going to be very painful for a lot of people because a lot of really deep-seated trauma is stuff that we have pushed away using food for years and years and years. But what I want people to understand is that you are actually in much more control than you've been led to believe. It's just when we feel that pang of emotion, we immediately react with what we've been taught to react with and cope with, which is typically in this scenario, food. So instead of being reactive, the best thing you can do is start to practice feeling your feels. Like, what is that emotion? What does that feel like? Why is that wrong? Why do I perceive that to be uncomfortable? What's really going on? What do I believe about what's happening? What triggered me? And where did that start for me in my life? And once you can figure that out, not only can you make sense of, oh, I'm just following this subconscious pathway that I've been trained into, and I do have power over this, and we can talk about how to create change here in a minute. But the first step is awareness. We can't make change if you believe something is wrong with you, self-sabotage is a conscious decision because it's not, and that you have enough willpower to overcome it because you don't. Does that make sense?
Totally. So if I could get you, I think that's so powerful, but almost back up just a tiny bit and just
Please.
go back to that, really simple. But when that moment happens,
yes,
you're asking us to stop.
Yes.
And start to notice, okay, something's going on.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Okay.
First step. Okay, let's start there. So yes, when the first thing we will notice will be something external, right? We aren't really tapped into our bodies yet. We're afraid of them, actually. We've spent our lifetime potentially running from those feelings because we were told that they're bad, they're wrong, right? And we don't want to be bad or wrong. We want to be good and happy. So when something external happens, like, and I think of thoughts as kind of external because they're quite tangible, right? We can recognize a thought pattern, or like let's say we always catch ourselves in the pantry after work and we don't know why. We don't know how we got there. We don't know why we got there. We just always end up with a jar of peanut butter in our hands and we can't explain it. You need to start paying attention to those patterns, those external patterns, the thoughts you're having, the actions that you're taking that are weakening your willpower, the things that you habitually do without even really thinking about it, and start to write those down. Okay, get them on paper so you can see them. Most people have like 5 to 10, maybe 10's pushing it, usually like 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. Okay, that we usually do. Or like, I know that when I fight with my husband, I will always go for this food. Or I know when my kids piss me off, I will always, go for this food, right? If you know your patterns, start to document them. Once you have them documented and you brought awareness to that, now we're ready to create space there. Now, when one of those 5 things happen, pause. What am I feeling? What's going on? Who's triggering me? Why am I reacting this way? How does this feel in my body? And start to, like, my favorite thing to do with clients when they're just starting to explore this is, it is a journaling. People are afraid to journal because it feels really threatening. It's like they have to write this big, long novel. No, I just do like, okay, set a timer for 2 minutes and write, or draw, or write any words that come to mind, or like anything that pops in your head. It doesn't have to make sense. I just want you to represent what you're experiencing in that moment on paper so that you can tangibly see it in front of you. Okay, that might be like a storm cloud with it raining on you, or it could be like a bunch of random words like anxious, mad, frustrated, pissed off, like whatever, right? It could just not make sense at all. That's not the point. The point is to get out of your head and onto paper whatever's going on in that moment. And then what I call this moment is creating a pause. What we want to get out of is feeling and reacting, feeling and reacting. If we can create a teeny tiny pause there, even for 1 or 2 minutes, we have the ability to widen that gap. And over time, with practice, the more you get comfortable sitting with the feeling that's coming up, the better you get at recognizing when those emotions come up, or recognizing when you're falling into these patterns, these decisions. You can widen the gap really naturally. It just takes conscious effort initially, which is the hard part, right? We have to be willing to be aware, because it's much more comfortable to say, oh, there's anxiety. I'm just going to reach for that food again, because I know I have certainty about the fact that if I eat that, I'll feel good for a second. You have to be willing to feel uncomfortable and move through that to get to the other side, which is the hard part. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. I really appreciate you backing that up, because I think
totally.
Sometimes, and it's easy for us to be like, okay, yeah, I'll do that, and then I'll do this, and I'll do this, but to actually no, okay, that is a pause, and it's called a pause.
Yes.
To actually stop and take time there. And
take time there.
Yeah.
And I think like, expect it to be uncomfortable. I think when we have expectations around, and it's crazy because there's so many wild expectations floating around on the internet these days saying, you should be able to lose weight and never feel hungry, and this should be able to be easy for you. And then it just makes people who struggle feel othered.
Right.
And in fact, none of that is actually fully true. It's going to feel painful, especially if we're dealing with childhood traumas. If that is coming up for you in those moments, it's okay if the only pause you can create is 5 seconds. If you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you still eat that thing, I'm proud of you, because you didn't just immediately eat that thing. And then next time, let's try to work for 10 seconds. And then next time, let's try and work for 30 seconds, and then a minute. And then the more consistently you can do this, the bigger that gap is going to be, until eventually, now you're ready to insert something else into that gap other than food. Now you have the capacity to read a book instead, call a friend instead, go for a walk instead. The problem is most people think that they should just be able to go for a walk instead of eat right off the hop without even recognizing what they're feeling, they should just know that they should just go for a walk. And that's not how it works. You have to be patient with yourself. Okay, this is going to take weeks and months and years sometimes, right? This could be a lifelong journey. I am still learning things about myself. I still feel triggered sometimes. You know, we are all human. I think the mistake that a lot of people make is they expect to fix themselves and never deal with this ever again. The thing about triggers is they don't go away unless you physically remove them. If your kid's driving you crazy as a trigger, unless you take your kids and remove them from your house, they're not going anywhere. So we have to be in a position where we understand why that's happening, awareness around what we're feeling, the willingness to feel it and create space. And sometimes that awareness alone is so powerful that it can be like an awakening. Like, oh my God, I didn't know that this was controlling me. I feel empowered now to create space here. Food doesn't control me. My past trauma is controlling me. Right? That knowledge is sometimes so powerful that we can create instant shifts.
But I like that you said too, like sometimes it's not about getting it perfect the first time either. Sometimes it is about just like that 5 seconds, and that's still a win. It doesn't mean you did it wrong. It doesn't mean you're not getting it. It just means you've actually broken that pattern for the first time, and you don't have to have it all figured out right away.
Yeah, and you won't, right? You totally won't have it all figured out right away. I think like here's the really cool thing. When you start to get curious about yourself, this turns into less of a, I'm just going to do this until, and it turns more into, I'm committed to evolving myself. I'm committed to growing myself. I'm committed to being happy. And it's not just until I look a certain way, it's because I deserve to feel this way every day of my life. And when that shift can happen, now we're not in a rush. Now we know that as long as we're taking one extra little step each day, or we're committed to noticing one extra little thing each day, we're getting there, right? We can't compare our journey to anybody else's, right? And so even though it feels sometimes like we have miles and miles to go, and it feels exhausting thinking about that, I want you to remember that that's not helpful, right? We can't look at the end point and expect us to just figure out how to get there in the next month. We need to look at to this moment. Part of that, what I do with all my clients is really focus on being more present. Like this is clearly a part of that, is being more present, being present in the feelings that we're feeling and the things that are happening around us and why we're reacting the way we're reacting, but also being more present inside of being okay when things don't go the way that you expected them to go, and looking for the lesson there instead of instantly shifting into blame, guilt, shame, all of those difficult emotions, right? Instead of going, oh, I was supposed to create a pause and I didn't create a pause. Okay, but that's great. That's information. Why didn't you create a pause? Was it because you were afraid to feel that emotion? Was it because you were afraid of what you had to do with it once you felt it? Was it because you just kind of forgot about this conversation and that's okay, and next time you'll try again, right? Like everything we do is information. We just need to become detectives. We need to get curious. Why are we reacting the way we're reacting? And where can we start to put little cracks into our surface so that we can break them wide open one day?
Awesome.
Right?
I like the way you said that. It's about, questioning yourself and kind of like, that inward journey and that, your own transformation. It's not about getting to a certain point by a certain time or doing it perfectly, or, everybody gets to have it look the way they want. And it's about your own evolution and your own growth. And obviously, we're all individuals. We do it at our own time to our own extent. And like you said, for some people, just that pause creates a monumental awakening or a shift. And for some people, it's somewhere else. But it's that start and it's that possibility. And I think that's what makes it almost kind of exciting, actually. It's
so like exciting.
Possibility there.
Totally. Absolutely. It's like, let yourself feel proud of yourself for not immediately reacting in that moment. Like, yeah, you paused for 5 seconds and then you ate the thing anyways, and that's okay. But like, you paused, you recognized an emotion. That's huge, because you would not believe how many people go through their life not feeling anything because they're too afraid of their emotions. Emotions are what drive everything. We don't take a single action without feeling something first.
Mm.
Okay? Like emotions drive everything good that's in your life, and they drive everything that you want to change about yourself. Every single one. Okay? So you don't only have to practice feeling your emotions during the hard times, practice feeling your emotions during the really great times too, right? Because then it becomes more natural, it becomes more normal. You start to pay attention to, wow, this makes me way more happy than I thought, or this brings me a lot more joy than I thought it did, because I was just thinking about the past, I was thinking about the future. And that comes back to my point of being more present in your life, right? When we're more present in our life, we appreciate things more, we have more gratitude. And even though that sounds a little like frou-frou, like woo-woo, it's so important. It's so important to this journey. Because if all we're doing is going through motions like a robot, doing one thing so you can do the next thing, you are going to be really disappointed when you get to the end of that journey.
Mm.
Right? It's so funny. It's like, I remember, I still catch myself doing this. I'm sure you do too. It's like, okay, I got to eat breakfast so I can work out. I got to work out so I can get started on work. So I got to get started on work so I can make dinner. And like, we just go through life this way instead of being more focused on the present moment.
No, yeah, I totally agree. It's that I gotta, and then I gotta, and then I gotta, and then I gotta. And it's like, oh, when do I stop to take a breath?
Yeah.
Like,
Or like enjoy this.
Yes.
Right?
True. Totally true.
Right? Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. But we don't think about it because it takes, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about this, but I didn't always. And it takes practice. Even to this day, I have to remind myself, okay, Laura, you're eating breakfast. Just like sit here and eat breakfast and be present and enjoy this. Right? It does take conscious effort, and it, like, everyone is constantly evolving. So like with the self-sabotage piece, I think one of the main things that I need people to hook into is the idea of, if you're judging or blaming or shaming, you can't change it. Doesn't matter what it is. Okay. So if in that moment you sabotage yourself, and instead of going, what can I learn about this? You go, that was stupid. Why did I do that? Then you're instantly blocking yourself off from growth. Instantly. So try and catch yourself with the words that you're habitually using. Okay. Like, we all sort of come back to habitual statements that reinforce what we believe to be true. So if we believe that we lack willpower, we're never getting out of this cycle, it's going to take forever, I'll never be able to do that, we create evidence to support that. Right. In the words that we use, the things that we focus on. Okay. What we typically will pull out of an environment to prove that we are right. Totally. That's just our brain, right? So if we shift the words we're using to describe that scenario, we can create space on the back end of it for us to explore. So we want to look at like bookending it. On the front end, let's create space. Let's create a pause. On the back end, how did that pause go? How did that feel? Was it really uncomfortable? Could you have gone longer? What are you going to do next time? What did you learn about yourself in that moment? And if we can bookend those tricky moments, then we're growing through them, and you're going to get through it, and you're going to heal yourself because you're willing to feel and you're willing to explore and acknowledge what's going on, rather than just us putting our head in the sand and saying, I'll try again later. I'll try again next time, because that's not helpful, right? Yes, you will. You'll try again next time, but you're not really learning. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Totally.
Awesome. Do you have any questions about that?
No, I think you killed it. You did a really good job. I don't think there's anybody that can't really relate to that in some, like you say, in some piece, right?
Yeah. I think another really powerful piece of this, if people want to go there, is starting to make a list of their triggers. Starting to become aware, right? Like, who is triggering me? What is triggering me? What environments are triggering me? What inanimate objects are triggering me? And then just over time, like not all at once, because that would be very overwhelming, but over time, sorry, France is calling me. My bad. But over time, exploring like, okay, what's the first memory I have of being triggered by a piece of cake? What's the first memory I have of being triggered by Someone I love. What's the first memory I have of being triggered by being in a social circle? What's the emotion there? What do I believe about this? And then just starting to kind of create a little mind map for yourself, because once you're aware, now we can create change. If you know that your social circles trigger you, why? Do these people serve you? Do they make you feel bad about yourself? Are these people you really want in your life? Is it more so your perception of what you think you need to be or who you need to be in order to impress them? Is that really true? Is that truth, or is that made up? Is that in your head? And if it's made up, where did you learn that? Right? Like, get curious, because that's where your answers lie. That's where your answers lie. And then let's say that social circle does make you feel bad about yourself. They like to make fun of you. Or they trigger you because you are the one who always drinks everybody else under the table. Like, you're the party animal, right? And they always rag on you for it, and it makes you feel like you have to be that person to be with them. Is that a group that you want to spend more or less time with? The thing is we make choices based on who we think we need to be all the time, and we abandon who we actually are in order to do that, right? And it's confusing at first when you start to do this, because we don't really know who we are or who we're allowed to be, because we've spent so long, right, trying to just become other people. So as soon as you give yourself that permission to just be like, you know what? I'm not going for dinner with them this weekend. You know what? I'm going to say no to that invite out for coffee with that friend who likes to make fun of me. And I'm not going to give an excuse why. I'm just going to say, thank you so much. I can't this time. That's so empowering. And you get to choose. You get to choose who gets to be in your life and what gets to be in your life, right? So yeah, it's a lot of work. But when we break it down into little small things like a trigger or a pause, it can start to feel more digestible, and it can start to empower us. And then one little win can build into more wins. And those wins are what cracks you open and gives you the power back to decide who you want to be, how you want to feel, what's going to control you in your environment, and what you're not going to stand for anymore. It gives you the opportunity to raise your standards for yourself.
That's awesome. Really awesome. So when somebody gets to that point, they're starting to have these pauses, and they're starting to be like, okay, yep, this is the trigger. My husband's left his socks on the floor yet again, and I know this is what it brings up, and I know it maybe takes me back to being a child because, you know, my mom was resentful at my dad because he never helped with the laundry, and then they would get into an argument, and then I would go hide in my room and soothe with food.
Yes, yes.
So you start putting all those pieces together, and you're like, okay, this makes sense. Like, I know why this is coming from here now.
Yeah. What to do next.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I understand, but I'm still doing it. At that point, we need to make some choices. Is it worth you falling into past patterns of feeling shame and blame and guilt because your husband left his socks on the floor? Are you willing to let that environmental trigger control how you're going to feel about yourself? Once we have awareness, we have choice, right? We have choice. Okay, in that moment when I feel triggered by those socks, I need to create a pause, and I need to recognize this is not a big deal. My husband loves me. I am loved. I don't need to feel like I need to be his mother. I can simply ask him to pick up his own damn socks. Right? And we get caught in these stories. Like we all do. Like, I have to do this. And then it spins into, he doesn't love me. He does nothing around the house. And right? It spins into this massive thing. And then you end up in the fridge. But it's not worth it. And if you're able to create a pause in that moment, you can recognize that it's not worth it. You can feel the emotion. That's what the pause is for. And then you insert something else there instead. So if you feel triggered by the socks, recognize it. What am I feeling? I'm feeling frustration. I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling guilt. Okay. I'm feeling anger, whatever it is you're feeling. Own it. Breathe through it. Try and locate it in your body. Where do I feel it in my body? Is it in my chest? Is it in my stomach? Am I vibrating because I'm so angry? And then choose to insert something else there. Okay. Instead of eating, I'm going to let this emotion dissipate, because it will. If you sit with it and breathe into it and recognize it's there and let it be there, it will dissipate. and then you get to choose to do something else. So what I would do for the next step is start to create a list of things that you can very quickly and easily do that empower you, that you enjoy, instead of eating. So in any scenario, you have like a list of 5 to 10 things I sometimes recommend like print off 5 copies, put one on the fridge, put one in the pantry, put one in the bathroom, put one in your car, and put one in your purse or whatever, right? So you always have your list. And then pick something off your list. Like, okay, I'm pausing. I feel this emotion. It's dissipated. I'm going to go to my list and I'm going to take 10 minutes or 5 minutes. I'm going to lock myself in the bathroom. I'm going to plug my favorite song on. And I'm going to have a little dance party, or I'm going to take my dog for a walk around the block. Or I'm going to call my sister because she's always really empowering. Or I'm going to listen to this recording again, or plug into a podcast or whatever. It doesn't matter. It just has to make you feel good, right? Has to make you feel good for that moment. Because remember, what was food doing? It was making you feel good. It was pulling you into a hit of dopamine. It was pulling you into an elevated state. So we need to pick something that's going to pull you into an elevated state. So don't say, I'm going to go for a hard workout instead. Because like, is that going to create a hit of dopamine? Eventually, but right now, it's probably going to also create anxiety. So we can't replace something that's creating anxiety with something else that could potentially create anxiety, even though we think that's what we should be doing, right? Something easy, something really accessible. Go pet your dog. Go play catch in the backyard for 2 minutes, right? And give yourself permission to do that. Don't get caught in the story of, I don't have time. Because if you were to eat, you would have made the time. So make the time for this instead, right?
That totally makes sense.
Yes.
I like what you said about the dopamine too, because I think sometimes we can also get caught in that pattern of, oh, I was going to eat, so I got to go punish myself.
Yes.
You know, and sometimes use exercise specifically as a punishment.
Yes. Yeah. Like you were saying before we hopped on the record, exercise is meant to make us feel good. If we do it and it doesn't make us feel good, what are we doing it for? Right? Like, is that extra 150 calorie burn that we might get worth creating anxiety and feeling frustrated the whole time and maybe triggering us over the rest of the day? Maybe we just need to start a little bit smaller. Maybe we need to just go for a walk around the house and then around the block and then around the park and like slowly begin to enjoy it. And if that's not your thing, maybe you need to do Zumba. Maybe you need to do aqua size. Maybe you need to try something totally out of left field. Maybe you need to do like dance videos on YouTube. Like, I don't know, but it's supposed to be fun, right? The intention of exercise should never be, I need to do this so I can lose weight. Because what happens when you lose the weight? Are you just going to stop exercising then? Right? And then what's going to happen after that? So the intention behind everything we do has to be lifelong. It has to be with the purpose of feeling great in our bodies.
No, and I love that you said that too, because I've come across people too who've been successful with weight loss, thinking that was the answer to their happiness.
Yeah.
And then suddenly haven't necessarily taken that pause or been willing to feel the emotions. And all of a sudden, you know, they're close to the weight they want to be, but they don't feel any better.
Yes. And that's like, those people are some of the strongest people alive, because what they've done is they've essentially created weight loss, white knuckling it the whole time, layering all of these bumper pads onto them, controlling their behaviors, even though they're being triggered like crazy. The triggers don't go away. The subconscious thought patterns that are triggering us don't stop just because we've decided that we're going to track our food. We're still getting triggered, but they have the willpower to ignore them. And if they've lost a great deal of weight doing that, they've come a long way, they've lasted months and months and months, oh my God, these people are so mentally strong. But they feel like the weakest people because they eventually fall back into past patterns and put all the weight back on. It's not you. It's your patterns. It's your subconscious mind. And you didn't know this before. It wasn't your fault. You put the weight back on because your brain is controlling you, as it does everybody, right? And so when we ignore this deep stuff, when we don't want to deal with our emotions, we don't want to talk about our traumas, that's what happens. We get caught in this cycle of losing and regaining for potentially our whole life. When really, if we're just willing to feel a little bit of pain for a short period of time and face it and own it and accept it as a part of who we are and where we've come through, then we can actually just move on from it. And we don't fall into this pattern because now we've created a new pattern.
No, that totally makes sense.
It's powerful. It's so powerful. And like, I speak it so simply. It's definitely not simple, right? It's easier said than done for sure. Because in that moment, when we feel triggered, we feel triggered.
Yes.
We want to eat. That drive is strong. But you're strong too, right? And you have the capacity to recognize it and pause for just a few seconds and then grow that over time. For sure, you just have to believe in yourself and be willing to feel something other than something that you perceive to be good. Because at the end of the day, what you perceive to be good in that moment is actually the problem. It's actually reinforcing the pain that you are using it to run away from, which is like crazy, right? But it's true. That's what's happening.
So I know somebody out there is going to be thinking this, so I'm just going to ask it. But it's,
sure.
Hey, I'm willing to do it. How long is this pain gonna last for, and is it worth it?
It's so worth it. Yes. Okay. How long will it last for? Let's tackle that first. It depends on how severe your trauma was. Someone who went through child abuse is going to have a lot more pain than someone who was made fun of in high school. Right? So your trauma determines the length of your endurance to have to push through and feel. And if you're tackling traumas like child abuse or domestic abuse or anything heavy like that, you should probably have support with someone who understands and can guide you. Not a coach who is just giving you a plan. It's not what I'm talking about. Someone who understands what you're going through emotionally and can be a sounding board for you in those moments, right? So the bigger the trauma, the longer it will last. It will always come to an end though. So is it worth it? Yes, unless you would like to stay in this cycle forever.
Right.
So if you don't want to feel that pain and you don't want to talk about it with anyone and you don't want to face it on your own, that's okay too. Like, that's totally okay. If you're not ready, that's totally fine. There's no judgment, right? This is your life. This is your journey. But eventually the pain of going through this cycle is going to become greater than the pain you feel in those moments. And when that happens, you'll be ready.
No, I love that. I mean, just from personal experience, there are some things that I struggled for years and years and years to face because I'm like, it's going to take me under. Like, it's so big. I don't know if I'll ever get through it. Yeah. But I worked myself up so much about it that when I finally did it, yeah, it hurt. Yeah, it was hard, but it was like a wave. It kind of came up, it came down, and then there was something so different on the other side. And I kind of looked over going, that's what I spent all this time and energy avoiding. Like,
yes.
Really, if I had just been willing to do this years ago, it would have saved a lot. It doesn't mean, like you say, it doesn't mean it's totally gone away.
No.
I can address it. I can look at it. I can talk about it. I can actually use it for good now instead of just, having it run my life and keep me from doing the things that I want to do.
Totally. And that's just such a truth in so many facets of our life. It's like our idea and our story about what it's going to be like is so much bigger than what it actually ends up being. Right. And so catch yourself in the stories, catch yourself in the justifications. I'll deal with this later. This is too big for me right now. I can't handle this right now. I have too much going on in my life. My plate is too full. I can't deal with emotion. On top of that, emotion is right. Emotion is your human right. Emotion is what makes you human, So if you're denying yourself feeling bad emotions, it's just because you're labeling them as bad. Emotion can't kill you. Emotion's not going to end you. You're going to get through it. Just find a safe space to feel it. If you need to scream into a pillow, scream into a pillow. If you need to lock yourself in the bathroom and cry it out, lock yourself into the bathroom and cry it out. Because the longer we keep those really heavy emotions in us, the more they fester and create or reinforce the patterns we're trying to escape from. Right? So just Commit to feeling, even if it's like, okay, I'm going to commit to feeling for 7 days. I'm going to let myself feel for 7 days. And if after 7 days, I don't like this and I'm too afraid to do it anymore, that's okay. But I'm going to try it and then just see what happens, because you're probably going to surprise yourself. You'll probably handle it a lot better than you think. And there's lots of different ways you can feel. Some people are physical, kinesthetic. Some people are more visual. They like to write and journal. Some people like to share, right? Talk it out. It can be powerful to record voice notes for yourself. If you're in your car and you're driving and something's coming up, record a voice note for yourself. Listen back to it later. Pick up on what you didn't pick up on in that moment, right? That can all work really, really well.
What would you say to somebody? I'm just curious, because I know this has come up for me and I've heard it many other places, but that's like, okay, well, I want to, but I'm just so busy. I just don't have time.
Yeah.
I don't have time to do this. Like, no, I can't open that can of worms right now. I've got way too much going on.
I think time's a perception, right? We perceive it to like take hours and hours of our time every day, but really you're finding the time to eat in those moments, right? You're finding the time to cope in those moments. So if you're taking 5 seconds to put a chocolate in your mouth versus 5 seconds to create a pause, it's no more time. We have this illusion of mental bandwidth. It's not actual physical time we lack, it's mental bandwidth we perceive to lack. Okay, so I think challenge yourself in that story. Is it true I don't have time, or is this a convenient excuse not to do it? And if you really just don't have 5 seconds to pause, then like we got to talk about time management probably, which is fine. That's totally good. Like no judgment. Everyone's lives are different and everyone is going through a lot of different crazy things right now, especially, right? But I would challenge you to say you do have more time than you think. We spend a lot of time wasted. Like if you're watching any sort of Netflix at any point in the day, or you're on any sort of social media platform on any point of the day, you have time for this. You have time for this. But when we're talking about mental bandwidth, where are your thoughts being pulled? Why do you feel exhausted all of the time? Are you exhausted because you're constantly worrying about what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future? Because that's mental bandwidth. And that feels like you don't have the capacity to handle the present. But what if you let the past fall away and let the worries of the future fall away, and you just committed to be present 1 hour a day? Right? How much more mental space would you feel like you had? And then what if that was your existence all the time? What if you could work towards that? Never worry about the past, be totally confident in who you are, and never worry about the future because you're fully present. That's like, I think that's what everyone's goal is eventually in life, mine included. I'm still working towards that. We all are, we're all human. But if you don't have time, I challenge you to question that and really figure out where do you need to clear up some mental bandwidth so you do feel like you have the space to, or just challenge the lie that you're telling yourself. Yeah.
That's a big
Does that
one.
make sense?
Yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think it's huge too. Yeah. Especially right now, we all have a lot of worries and fears and anxieties about what's going to happen. And everyone's situation is different. Everyone's financial situation is different. Careers are on the line. Like there's a lot of heavy stuff going on. So I get it. But the thing about it is life is going to continue to happen. No one could have predicted a pandemic. No one can predict what's happening next. So if you can find the space now to start to work on this, it doesn't have to be a lot of time. I think we also perceive us to not have time or energy because we think we have to do it all at once.
Yes.
Right? And that's going to be a lot. That's going to be too much. You just got to chunk it out and be patient and understand that one day at a time is all I need to do. And what are my wins? Did I pause? Was I aware? Right? Those are my wins.
I think that's important, like you say too, like to recognize those wins.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in the, like we said earlier, the I have to's, that taking that pause even for a minute to be like, actually I did this well today, or hey, I caught myself doing this, and finding the time to actually, identify those wins, I think is also crucial for people.
Huge. Otherwise we just chase something for some ambiguous reason and we don't feel the way we think we should at the end because we just did it for an arbitrary outcome instead of actually attaching some meaning to it.
Mm-hmm.
right? Just like we attach meaning to our past traumas. This is painful. This is wrong. This is bad. I'm coping with this with food because it makes me feel good. We also attach meanings to why we're doing things we're doing in the present day. What does exercise mean to me? Why am I eating healthy? If we're only doing it for a physical outcome, like you said earlier, you're going to be very upset when you reach your physical goal because nothing's going to have changed internally for you and you're going right back to where you were before. If you are at that point and you're feeling like, oh my God, I'm almost at my physical goal, but I haven't been doing any of this internal work, it's not too late. You get to start this at any time. This is your journey, right? Like just start it today. Focus on your triggers today. Because just because you haven't done that internal work doesn't mean you're not still being triggered. You absolutely are. You're just really good at not listening to them. Right? Yeah, it's powerful.
I love that you say that. Like start any day, because it's when you're willingness to say, okay, this is it. This is that trigger that she's talking about. Like you might be driving in your car tomorrow or next week and go, oh my gosh, this is what Laura was talking about. I'm feeling.
Totally. Like, yeah, triggers can come out of nowhere and they don't have to be anything food related. And here's the thing about triggers. You could have been driving to work in the morning and been caught in road rage because there was this big pile up on the whatever highway that you didn't expect and now you're late. And that set in motion a pattern in you that made you eat at night when you got home. Your triggers don't have to happen right before you eat. Your triggers can happen hours and hours before. Okay, so get curious. What happened today that threw me off? What happened today that did not feel good? When did this start for me today? And pay attention. Oh my God, I reacted to traffic and that made me cope 9 hours later. Wow, okay, why did I react to traffic? Oh, my dad had really bad road rage. Why did he have really bad road rage? Did he scream at me when he was in the car and we were stuck in traffic? Wow. Oh my God. Like that's where it started. Now, when you're stuck in traffic, be aware, pause. Do I want to react this way? This isn't my belief. This was given to me by my father. I don't blame him, but this is not mine to hold. I'm releasing it. I'm choosing to react differently. I'm choosing to create space here. And just breathe into it. Breathe into that anxiety, breathing into that anger and frustration and let it dissipate and you will feel better.
So would you then say, like when you feel yourself having a reaction, either lashing out at somebody or getting angry at someone or frustrated, that's an indication of like, yeah, that's a trigger?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I just want to make that clear because I think sometimes it's like, is this a trigger? Is this not a trigger?
Start at the decision. Okay, this will be the easiest place to start. So if you're eating something to cope with something and you don't know what it is, you're just like in the pantry eating, you've been triggered always. That's the easiest place to start and then work your way back. Okay, what was the emotion I just felt a minute ago? What was I feeling? Okay, what happened before that? What happened before that? Where did this begin? Right? That's how you can kind of peel the layers back and start to understand. And then, like you said, eventually you'll recognize yourself. I'm picking a fight for no reason. I'm getting anxious about a sock on the floor for no reason. I'm getting mad because I'm stuck in traffic for no reason. These are all things that were given to me. They're not mine. These are all beliefs that were instilled upon me. They're not mine. So I'm going to create space and I'm going to feel them and own them and let them be there, but I'm going to let them go.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. It is amazing. It's really cool to see this in action with people who are committed to doing this work. It's really powerful. It's really cool. Because it's crazy how much change you can create without ever worrying about how many vegetables you're eating or how much protein you're getting in. If you can get a handle on why these behaviors are happening, you don't have to control them because you can just remove the pattern.
Right.
You can get rid of it completely. And you don't have to worry about never buying peanut butter and having it in the house because you can't control yourself with it. You can keep peanut butter in the fridge all the time because you won't be triggered to eat it anymore. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it's powerful for sure.
And I gather just from what you're saying too, for those that are willing to take the journey, it becomes more than just about the food and such too. It becomes having maybe a lighter, happier, less stressful, overall life changes.
Yeah, you start to see your life with new possibility, right? You start to see like where you've been holding yourself back for no reason. I've had so many clients who have said, I just got to lose the next 20 pounds and I'll be able to do this. Like, okay, well, is that factually true? Like, could you not just do that right now? It's like, well, yeah, but I'll feel better when. I'm like, okay, but you won't actually, because we have to actually do the internal work. So let's talk about this. Let's dig deeper with this, because I think you could really have an amazing time doing that thing right now. It's just your perception of who you need to be in order to enjoy yourself doing that thing, right? It's crazy the standards we hold ourselves to, but it's not our fault. A lot of the time this has been given to us from media, from family, from friends, from whatever. And we need to just begin to question our beliefs and ask ourselves, is this mine? Or am I holding this for someone else? Right?
I think that's so important.
It is so important.
Question, is this mine? Because I think we tend, as humans, like you said, take on a lot of stuff that's not ours.
We do all the time, especially my people pleasers out there. I was a people pleaser. It's heavy. It's exhausting. Put all that shit down. You don't need it. It's not yours. You don't have to protect other people's emotions. You don't have to protect what other people think about you. You get to just be you. And if people don't accept that, that's their issue. That is not your issue. If people don't like something that you said or did, and it was in your truth, that was who you truly are, who gives a shit? Like, honestly, let that person fall away. They don't serve you. They did at one point because they were evidence that the beliefs that you had were right. They served that purpose for you, right? They were a constant reminder that you're not worth it. You can't do this. And we look for really strong evidence pieces to support those beliefs, even though they're negative. We can't help it.
That's totally true.
Right? We surround ourselves with people that reinforce it, or things, or experiences. But it's time we stop doing that, I think. And let that fall away so that we can just be ourselves. Yeah.
Awesome.
Powerful.
Very. So we'll make sure that we have your information to this speaker page when this goes out, because I think you've hit on so many things today. My mind's blown. I'm speechless, but I think it is. It's so, this journey inward is so crucial for everything. Yeah. Let go of all of it, right? And the more you let go of, the more the physical, the emotional, the mental, like it's all weight.
It's all weight.
It's all just weight, right? Like
it really is.
And and to stop trying to view it, like you say, as positive or negative, it just is. But forgive yourself for it and start to let it go.
I think like my last little point would be, what we resist, we attract more of. Right? So if we feel anxious and we resist it over and over and over and over again, we attract more into our life that creates anxiety. Anxiety in you just wants to be seen and accepted. And once you can see it and accept it and own it and recognize where it came from, and you're willing to feel it and not fight it, guess what? It dissipates in that moment right there, right? It's crazy if we stop fighting our natural selves and we just like, okay, I see you. I see you. I feel you. I don't like you, but I accept you, right? And then just let it go. And your world can change really quickly.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure we have your contact information. And if Laura said something today, that speaks to you, or you're like, oh, I need to know more about that, please feel free to reach out to her. She's obviously a wealth of information. We have a limited time, but I think we have a number of these things we could go on and on and on about.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'm absolutely an open book. If anybody has any questions, or you'd like to share your story with me and have me help you apply some of these concepts to your own life, absolutely just reach out. You can grab me on Facebook. I'll make sure you have my links, and I'll also give you my personal email. So if people are more inclined to use email, that's totally fine with me as well.
That's awesome. Because I think, like you said right at the beginning, self-sabotage is actually so misunderstood.
So misunderstood.
And when
yes.
we started talking, this is not the direction. you know, I kind of knew that there'd be a little bit of like, you know, internal work, but I don't think I ever would have looked at it the way you presented it.
Yeah,
Done
it's
that
really
kind of
cool.
level, right? But yet we beat
Thank you.
ourselves up so much about it for not being able to figure it out, right?
I know, like as if we can,
Mhm.
right? As if we can, as if it's our conscious choice, but it's just, that's what we've been told. So that's what we believe. Why would we not believe it? Because it makes sense. If I change my decision, I will get a different outcome. Yes, 100%. But what if you don't have to, right? What if you can do something deeper and make this journey a whole lot more enjoyable for yourself? So that's my mission. So I hope it hit home with people. I hope it was helpful to reframe and get you thinking about your own triggers and where you feel like you've been labeling yourself as a self-sabotager, because like, dang, if you have had the willpower to withstand your triggers, you have so much more willpower than a lot of people. You're not broken. You're actually stronger, right? We just need to redirect that energy into the right places.
I love that. I know you've got a bunch of things on the go, so thank you so much for your time. And like I said,
Thanks,
please
Jen.
reach out. Laura's great. Even if you just want to tell her something like, this is what hit me, or me.
Yes, please. Oh, that makes my world go around. That's the
Yeah.
best part about what I do. Please do that. Awesome. Thanks so much, Jen. It was so fun chatting with you.
Yes.